Good evening and welcome to the programme with me, Louisa Preston. First tonight, we now know the names of 3 more of the commuters who died in Croydon's tragic tram crash. All are parents and have been named as Phil Seary, Mark Smith and Derailment. Meanwhile, crash investigators are appealing for witnesses to help establish exactly how the derailment happened. More on that in a moment. But first, we can cross to Mark Ashdown, who spent the day in Croydon. Mark.
Yes, Louisa, another difficult day here in Croydon. The engineers continue to work tirelessly to remove the tram for analysis, but also to get this service back up and running. Thousands rely on it. And a difficult day for the people of Croydon. As the flowers here continue to mount up, they're struggling to come to terms with what happened.
Now observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect to all those affected by Wednesday's train incident.
They expected a silent tribute today, but not like this. After the traditional armistice service, a moment to reflect and remember the 7 people who lost their lives on Wednesday. Young and old, this tragedy has touched the whole community. What's been the reaction then? You've been talking to people, obviously, as they come here to sign the book of condolence.
Great sadness for those who lost their lives, people who were going to work to support their families for Christmas, mums, dads, brothers, sisters, uncles and aunts will never be seen again. So that the Croydon is coming together.
Sad time, really. I mean, it's not going to be over for a long time, I suppose. Really, all this.
It's affected a lot of people.
Oh, crikey, yeah, an awful lot.
I feel quite moved by the whole thing.
A moment's pause too for the workmen still trying to clear the wreckage. The tram was lifted upright today and will now be taken to be thoroughly examined for clues as to what caused this. All people here can do is wait and offer support. At this golf club a few hundred yards up the road, they've opened a book of condolence and will donate funds from this weekend's tournament to families involved.
Many people feel helpless on what they can do because the emergency services are all over the place. They're working extraordinary hours, and we're just trying to do whatever we can to put a little bit of comfort and throw open our doors and just be a place of refuge.
The Red Cross was called in by Croydon Council to set up a relief centre.
But in a situation such as this, the Red Cross would provide emotional support, practical support, not only to the local community and those involved, but to the Category 1 responders, the blue light services, who themselves may need some support.
Tonight, the tributes continue at the scene. Life will go on here as everyone pulls together for those who've lost so much. Mark Ashdown, BBC London News.
Well, our transport correspondent Tom Edwards has been taking a closer look at the issues the crash investigators will be considering.
There are at least 2 investigations into this crash. The tram was full of passengers when it derailed on a sharp bend heading into Croydon. There were some eyewitnesses, and rail safety investigators now want to speak to them.
If you were on the tram that derailed, please contact us. We would also like to hear from people who have any information that they feel is relevant. They may be people who travel on the route regularly by tram, work on the tram, or people who live locally.
So 3 days after this crash, what do we know? Well, this footage shows a tram in the tunnel approaching the corner where the derailment happened. The speed limit is 50 miles per hour. Tram drivers have told me it's known as Triangle Corner, a former British rail line, and it's notorious. And it's around this point that the driver should be slowing down, because here on this tight bend, the speed restriction is 12 miles per hour. This image of the crash site shows what happened after the tram came off the tracks. The investigation has already said the tram was going too fast. The crucial question is why. Tram speeds are controlled by the driver. They do have safety mechanisms to bring it to a halt if the driver's incapacitated, but they don't have speed limiters or measures to stop them going through signals, and there are now calls for further restrictions.
Trams are treated as buses with metal wheels. They're not really that. They're small trains, and they ought to have the same safety standards that trains would have, with controls of signalling and controls of speed. And in the shorter term, there's one thing that I think could happen. Speed cameras could be put in the 2 tunnels that converge at Sandilands to knock out the power from the line if the driver was found to be speeding, which of course he shouldn't be in the first place.
The unions say there are issues with the layout of this corner, and it must be looked at instead of blaming individuals. Previously, trams have had a very good safety record.
Let's not detract from the fact that this has been a terrible accident with the fatalities, and we need to find out why it happened and learn the lessons. But 27 million people a year use the Croydon tramways, which opened in 2000, and it is a very safe system. Transport is not risk-free. We can manage that risk and we can manage it down, and that's what we've got to do. But where there's movement, there is always a bit of risk, and just occasionally it does go wrong.
A separate police investigation is looking at if the driver fell asleep or passed out, and whether there has been a history of speeding on this corner. But it could be many months before there are definitive answers.
Well, Tom joins us now. Tom, do we have any idea on the timescale of this, though?
Well, a little bit. Next week we will get the results of a preliminary report from the rail safety investigators, and what that will do will outline the whole process of their full investigation, which I'm told could take at least 9 months. However, what's interesting, I think, is if it finds serious problems with tram operations in Croydon, it could make urgent safety recommendations. I think it's also worth pointing out that this is a technical report, though. It won't attribute blame or prejudice, and the police investigation is now running parallel to this.
Tom, thanks very much for that update. Tom Edwards there.